Critiquing app design is hard. It's hard to know whether an interface is good or bad or what could be improved. And when assessing whether it's usable, one thing I always look for is depth cues. So, a bit of a history of interface design. A while ago, a lot of apps were designed with something called skeuomorphic design, taking inspiration from the physical world to shape what the digital world looks like. But then that all changed in 2013 when Apple released iOS 7. Overnight, all these detailed skeuomorphic designs were gone. There was a much stronger focus on bright colors, bright gradients, a very bubbly, colorful interface. And this kind of led to what's called flat design. There's no lighting cues, no shadows, no sense of depth. Everything is just a flat color. And flat design isn't necessarily that good for usability. It's hard to work out what's clickable. If you've got like modals, what should be on the top layer, what's below. So slowly people are bringing sense of depth back, and this is most prominent in Material 3, where we've got ideas of surfaces and different surface colors. And apps like Cron and Linear and Raycast are really leading the way with this fine attention to detail. So in this video, I'm going to show you how to make designs which pay attention to these depth cues. We're going to look at this flat toggle design and elevate it so it's got more depth, more lighting, some tweaks to the animation, all with the aim of making it feel more refined. Hey, I'm Pavan. I'm a design educator who teaches people how to get better at design. If you're new here, make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any new videos on this channel. And if you want to follow along with this quick tutorial, there's a link to the Figma file down in the description. Let's jump into Figma and take a look. So just to take a look at what we're going to make, we've got the plain version here and the kind of refined version with all the depth cues here. And we're also going to play with the animation, so showing you what that looks like here. The plain one just goes on and off, and the more refined one has a bounce as it turns on and then kind of gradually turns off. So before I jump into showing you how to add those depth cues, just to say that these are frames with a border radius of 200, that's how we've got that rounded edge, and inside there we've just got an ellipse. So there's no extra layers, it's just a frame with an ellipse inside. So the very first thing we're going to do is add an inner shadow to this frame. So I'll select both of them, scroll down to effects and press plus, change that to an inner shadow. And you can see this is a bit strong, so we're just going to drop the amounts. Maybe try 2 and 1 for blur, or maybe keep a stronger blur and have less of a Y distance. I'm also going to drop the opacity so it's even more subtle. And I think that looks nice. We've got a nice inner shadow. So this might be the furthest most people go when adding a depth effect to a toggle switch, but we're going to take it a step further. So the second thing we're going to do is add a drop shadow to the button itself. So if I select both of them, go to effects and have it as drop shadow, that looks pretty good by default, but I think we can afford to drop it down a bit. The third thing we're going to do is add a bit of roundness to the button. So we'll do that by adding a radial gradient. So I'm going to change the solid fill from a solid color with white. If I click up here to the drop down menu, I can change it to a radial gradient. What I'm going to do is if I click on it and then click back on radial, so I click on the shape and then I click back on the fill, the square next to where it says radial. Now I can adjust the placement of these stops. And what I want to do is I want to make sure that the grey stop is right at the bottom and the 2 white stops are above it. Then I want to move the whole gradient down to the bottom. So you can see now it looks like there's a light source coming from above, and that's why it's kind of got this grey bit at the bottom. And I can move this down. It really helps to zoom out and then you can see what's going on. So if we want it to be more full, more rounded, we could do something like this. And if I change this one back to a solid fill, you can see the difference straight away. Now to copy and paste it from one to the other, if I click on that square, this is going to open this menu. But if I click just to the left, I can highlight this row. And I can just do Command C, and then Command V. So now we've got a bit of rounding on our button. To make it even more realistic, I'm going to bring back a white highlight here. You'll see this in the real world. You'll have the light above it, a shadow at the bottom where there's no light, but then another bounce light right at the bottom. So all I'm going to do is add an inner shadow, set it to white, set it to minus. Now you can see it appearing along the bottom. And let me turn the blur off completely so you can see what I mean. I'll make it even more obvious by making this grey a bit darker. And obviously without the blur, it doesn't look very good. But when we add that blur back in, you can just see it gives it a very slight glow here. I'm going to bring the blur down a bit so you can really see it. And there, I think that looks really nice. I am going to bring that grey back up a bit so it's less obvious. So you can really see I'm tweaking as I go. I'm not making any final decisions. And this is what I want you to do. I don't want you to copy the numbers I'm using. I think it's better to just play around with it. So now our toggle's looking pretty good, but I want to add a glow or a drop shadow. And the reason I want to do that is to really emphasize when the toggle is in its on state. So I'm going to do these two separately, just add a drop shadow to the top one, and by setting the X and Y to 0, I don't really have it being a directional shadow, it's just kind of outside it. And by blurring it, it gives it a very slight glow. So if I turn that on and off, that's off and that's with it. So it's really subtle, but we're going to use that because when we have it on the on state, we're going to make it so much more obvious. So for the on state, we're going to keep it 0, 0, so it's centered below it. We're going to put the blur up to 8, and we're actually going to change the color to be the background color. So this is quite good, but I want to make it a bit more subtle, so we'll drop it back down to 20%. I like this level of opacity, but I want it to be more spread. And you can see we've got a shadow spread option, but I'm not allowed to turn it on. So if I go up here, turn clip content on for the whole frame, this means that nothing outside the bounds of the frame gets shown, which allows me to add a spread. So I'm going to put that up to maybe 5. So now you can see it's a lot more subtle. So that will be really nice when we turn it on. It will feel like it's glowing, almost like it's got an electric buzz to it. The very last thing I'm going to do is add a stroke around this frame. So this is just to kind of bring back a bit more definition to make sure we don't lose the outline with the glow. So I'll add a stroke. Obviously that's not what we want, so if we make it white, make it 0.5, and what we can do here, which is really nice, is if we change that to a linear and swap those values around so it's transparent at the top and white at the bottom, you can see it's got this really nice subtle effect around here. I'm actually going to change those values to maybe 25 at the top and 75 at the bottom, so it's never 100% white. You can see the stroke kind of changes as you go around it. So these are our toggles. I hope you will agree they look a lot more kind of refined, a lot more classy than the ones we had before. Looking at them side by side, you can really see that this one has a lot more interest. It's a lot clearer what's clickable, and I think it just looks better. Remember as well that we won't be looking at them this close. On an interface, they'll probably be really small. And even though it might be hard to see some of these effects, I think it really does make a big difference. So the very last thing we're going to do is we're going to add a bit of animation. So if I select both of these toggles and change them into a component set, so a component set just means there are 2 variants within the component, which means we can add something called interactive components and add some prototyping within this component. By changing over to the prototype panel, we can drag down, so on click it changes to the state being turned on, and on click it changes to the state being off. So I'll drag out an instance so we can see what that looks like. So holding down Option, dragging this over here, Shift A to put this in a frame, just going to rename that with Command R, then add a flow starting point and press play. So here we've just got the switch turning on and off with no animation. I think it's really nice to have a very quick turning on and a slow turning off. So you can see I've used this on my personal website as well. If you hover on the logo in the top right, it fills up really quickly, but then it's slightly slower to come out. I've done that on all the links as well, so the box shadow opens up quickly and then it slowly comes down. To do that in Figma is really easy because we now have easing options. So here for animation, we're going to change this to Smart Animate and set it to quick on the way in, and on the way out we'll set that to the same, Smart Animate, and then gentle. So taking a look, I think quick could still afford to be quicker, but I quite like how gentle the gentle one is. And you can see for both of these we have a bit of overshoot, so it goes further and then comes back. I don't really want the overshoot coming back, so what we'll do is we'll go into custom spring, so this now gives us the defaults for quick, and change that to 300, and down here we can change these values, or we can change them visually, but this will show us how much overshoot we're getting. So again, for gentle, change it to custom spring. These are the default gentle options. Just going to move that down so we don't get any overshoot. It just kind of stays underneath that line the whole way. Let's take a look. I think that feels much better. So it's really quick to turn on. It's got a bit of a jitter as it overshoots, and then comes to a stop, and then turning it off, it goes very gentle. I should also say the reason that Smart Animate is moving this button is because the layer is called button in both versions. And there we have it. This is our final toggle, and I hope you agree it looks a lot more refined, a lot better. Great, so you've seen how to take this flat toggle to a really kind of nice, elevated, refined design. Adding depth cues like this is so useful for usability, but more than that, it just makes your app feel more polished, more refined, and that you've really taken care to pay attention to those details. Because it's so easy to kind of get into design now, design has really been democratized, which means for new product companies, new apps, it's really table stakes to have really, really good design, paying loads of attention to the interface details. So by using techniques like this and recreating this example, you can really make sure your interface designs are taken to the next level. Before I go, I just want to say if you like this video, please do hit the like button below. It really helps me out. And do make sure you hit subscribe so you don't miss any new ones. All the best and speak to you soon. Cheers.